9 months pregnant, I ran into my husband, Beckett Shaw, and his mistress at the hospital. The moment I picked up my report, I saw the two of them celebrating the upcoming arrival of their own child. Delaney pretended to be concerned. "Beckett, you really shouldn't be here with me. If Evelyn finds out, she'll be upset. She's pregnant too. Aren't you worried she'd be upset?" Beckett let out a cold chuckle. "If she causes a scene, I'll just divorce her." Since Beckett didn't want us anymore, I'd rather raise the child without a father than stay in this farce of a marriage. I called my dad, who was living overseas. "Dad, I've made up my mind. I'm getting a divorce. I'm taking the baby and moving out to be with you." After I hung up, I booked the earliest flight available. 2 weeks, that's all I needed. 2 weeks and I'd be out of Beckett's life for good. But then why did that man show up at my wedding with red eyes, begging me to take him back? 9 months pregnant, and the moment I received my prenatal report, I saw my husband attending a prenatal appointment with his first love, Delaney Cross. "Beckett, you coming with me to this appointment? If Evelyn finds out, she'll be really upset. She's due soon, too. Aren't you worried?" Delaney said with a voice full of pretend concern, but I caught the smugness in her eyes. Beckett kissed her belly gently and replied with chilling indifference, "She doesn't know about this and I'm not planning on telling her. Maybe it's the hormones, but her mood's been all over the place lately. I don't want her making things difficult for you. But we can't keep sneaking around like this. Evelyn's heavily pregnant, too. If she finds out, I'm afraid she..." "There's nothing to be afraid of. It's my duty to be here with you for this appointment. After all, the baby is mine, too. If Evelyn wants to cause trouble, I'll just divorce her." The coldness in Beckett's voice when he spoke about me made my blood run cold. If Beckett had already decided to toss us aside, then I would beat him to it. I would leave him and raise this child on my own. I let out a bitter smile as my heart finally gave up. I pulled out my phone and called my father overseas. "Dad, I've made up my mind. I'm divorcing him. I'll bring the baby and come live with you." "I'm glad you finally came to your senses," came his voice through the line. "The Shaws might come from an elite family, but ours isn't lacking either. If staying there only brings you pain, then yes, leave him and raise the child on your own." "You're right, Dad." After hanging up, I immediately booked the next flight out. I thought back to this morning, when I asked Beckett to come to my appointment with me. He said he had work. Turns out he was just accompanying Delaney to hers. 9 months of pregnancy and not once had Beckett ever come with me to the hospital. Delaney had her engagement called off 3 months ago, and ever since she came back to the country, Beckett had been meeting her over and over again. From the moment she returned, Beckett and I had barely shared any time alone. Whenever Delaney called, even if it was just a text, Beckett would drop everything and rush to her. He even hugged her affectionately right in front of me. It wasn't like I hadn't confronted him about it, but every time I did, he brushed me off with the same excuse, that Delaney was going through a hard time and needed support. According to him, everything he did was to help Delaney back on her feet. She was pregnant, he said, and he had a moral obligation to be there for her. But Beckett seemed to forget one crucial fact. Delaney wasn't the only pregnant woman in his life. I was, too, and I was even further along than she was. If anything, I was the one who needed care the most. For the longest time, I thought the baby Delaney was carrying was Beckett's. I tried to ask indirectly. I even told him that if he no longer loved me, he needed to tell me outright. But every single time, he'd shut me down, impatient, dismissive, evasive, and the one time I dared question whose child Delaney was really carrying, he got furious. He kept reassuring me, over and over again, until I finally chose to trust him. I told myself he was just being kind, that he hadn't fallen out of love with me. But now, it's all so clear. Delaney's baby has always been his. They'd been sneaking around behind my back for God knows how long, and I was nothing more than their cover story. When Beckett mentioned divorcing me, I caught the way Delaney's eyes narrowed slightly, a flicker of satisfaction slipping through her carefully composed expression. "I never meant to take you from Evelyn," she said, her voice trembling ever so slightly. "It's just if my fiancé hadn't broken things off, none of this would have happened. I needed to protect my dignity, and thank God you were there, Beckett. I honestly don't know what I would have done, where I would have gone, after coming back to this country without you." Her eyes filled with tears, and Beckett, full of tenderness and concern, gently wrapped her in his arms. "I told you, I'll take care of you, Delaney. If it weren't for you back then, I would've," he trailed off. "Anyway, it's only right that I look after you," he continued. "Evelyn is my wife, so she should understand why I'm doing this, and so what if she finds out? I'll still be here for you, no matter what." Beckett patted Delaney gently, comforting her. As the doctor came out of the exam room, she glanced at them and said with envy, "You're one lucky woman, Mrs. Shaw. Your husband never misses a single checkup and he treats you with such care and affection." Delaney blushed, smiling bashfully, and Beckett nodded like it was only natural. I stared at the sickening scene in front of me, nails digging into my palms. 2 more weeks and I would be gone from Beckett's life forever. Beckett soon followed the doctor into the office to pick up the prenatal report. Delaney, however, made an excuse about needing to use the restroom and then just stood there. Once they were both inside, she finally drawled lazily, "You can come out now, you've been standing there watching long enough, haven't had your fill yet?" I stepped out without a word, my expression blank. Seeing that I stayed silent, Delaney grew impatient, her gaze sharpened with mockery. "What, no shame left at all? You knew Beckett never loved you, yet you still insist on holding on to the title of Mrs. Shaw?" I let out a cold laugh. "And you don't find it shameful to be the other woman, fully aware he's married?" Delaney's lips curled into a smile. "I knew Beckett long before you did. If I hadn't gone abroad, you'd never have had the chance to marry him." She lightly patted her belly, then added smugly, "But I'm back now, and I'm pregnant with his child, so I'd say it's time for you to step aside. From the moment I married Beckett, I knew he had a woman he considered his one true love, but I never thought she'd hold such an unshakable place in his heart." The pain that shot through my chest nearly brought me to my knees, my grip tightened instinctively on the report in my hand. And that's when Delaney saw and snatched it from me. She scanned the conclusion and burst into wild, gleeful laughter. "Cancer, huh?" she said. "So, what do you think? Will you live long enough to give birth to that bastard baby, or are you both going to die together?" Her laughter rang in my ears like sirens and something in me snapped. I stepped forward and slapped her, hard. She staggered back dramatically, then fell to the ground with a wail. "Evelyn, I didn't mean to keep this from you. But I'm pregnant. How could you hit me like that?" Huge, dramatic tears rolled down her cheeks, and before I could even process her performance, I felt a violent shove from behind. I lost my balance and my belly slammed into the cold, hard floor. Beckett grabbed my arm and yanked me up. I was still dazed, still trying to process the shock, when he yelled in my face. "Are you out of your mind? How could you push Delaney? She's pregnant." I stared at him, stunned. Before I could speak, Delaney cried out, "Beckett, please don't fight with Evelyn because of me. I shouldn't have asked you to come to the appointment with me. This is my fault. As long as the baby's okay, she can slap me." She looked like a tragic heroine, eyes glassy, lower lip trembling. Beckett's face twisted with anger. His voice was low and sharp when he turned to me. "You've crossed the line, Evelyn," he said coldly. "Apologize to Delaney." The sound of it shocked even me. I laughed, bitterly. "You want me to apologize?" I said, my voice hoarse. "Beckett, do you know what this is?" I shoved the cancer report into his chest, my hands shaking, my throat tightened with emotion. He didn't even look at it. He tore the paper in half and glared at me like I was the problem. "I don't care what that says. All I know is you've gone too far. God, you're pregnant, Evelyn. How could you be cruel to other women?" Tears finally slipped down my cheeks, hot and silent. My whole body trembled, not from pain, but from sheer fury. Beckett saw me crying and for a moment, his expression softened, his tone shifted to something gentler. "All right, can you just apologize? I know I haven't been giving you attention these past few months, but I promise I'll make it up to you once the baby's born." Then, without a trace of shame, he pushed me toward Delaney. She looked back at me, eyes glinting with smug triumph. I looked hard at Beckett, wondering how the man who once swore he loved me could change so drastically the moment Delaney came back. Had he forgotten every promise he made the day we stood at the altar? I drew in a long, steadying breath. "No," I said quietly, "I won't apologize, and Beckett, you've truly disappointed me." Then I turned and walked away. As I walked away, Beckett's face darkened. For a brief moment, panic flashed through his eyes. He started to take a step toward me, but then Delaney clutched her stomach and groaned. "Beckett, it hurts," she gasped, then forced out a teary plea, "But Evelyn's more important, go after her." Beckett hesitated only a second before shaking his head. "No, don't worry about her, right now, your condition is what matters most." He glanced down the hallway where I disappeared and I heard him mutter, "Evelyn's just throwing a tantrum, she's 8 months pregnant, she'll be terrified if I divorce her, I'll talk to her later." Then he scooped Delaney up and carried her into the hospital room. When I got home, I stood outside for a long moment, staring at the house that was supposed to be ours. Since Delaney returned to the country, Beckett had barely been home. I could no longer feel the warmth this house once held. I walked to the wall, took down our wedding photo and tossed it straight into the trash. I didn't want to leave a single trace of myself here, not one reminder of what used to be. I packed up all our couple items and stuffed them into a trash bag. I was heading down the stairs with it when the front door suddenly swung open. Beckett walked in, carrying Delaney in his arms. When he saw me standing silently by the door, a flicker of guilt flashed across his face. "She's not feeling well after what you did," he said, like that explained everything. "Not feeling well, huh?" I scoffed. "Then why isn't she in a hospital? Why the hell would you bring her here?" Do you think our home is some kind of recovery center for mistresses? Watch your words, Evelyn, he snapped. I'm trying to fix things here, whether you like it or not. Delaney is staying in this house. Delaney chimed in, her hand moving to gently rub her belly. It's true, Evelyn, there's nothing going on between Beckett and me, I'm only staying for the baby. She said it just to provoke me. I could feel the anger rising in my chest, bubbling and hot. I looked at Beckett and said, firm and loud, this is our house, Beckett, I don't want her living here. Beckett paused, his face twisted like he was conflicted, but then Delaney grabbed his hand and placed it on her belly. Beckett's heart melted instantly. When he turned back to me, his voice was full of irritation. That's enough. You're pregnant too, how can you have zero empathy? You pushed Delaney, I'm just trying to take care of her, if you don't want her here, then maybe you should leave. His words hit like a slap. I stared at him, the blood draining from my face, my whole body trembled. And then I said, as clearly as I could, as you wish. Tonight would be my last night in this house, after this, I'd be gone, and Beckett Shaw would be a closed chapter in my life. With my decision made, I grabbed the trash bag in my hand and marched out the door. Delaney's voice followed behind me, laced with mock pity. Don't fight because of me, Beckett, look, she's so angry she even took down your wedding photo. Beckett's voice rumbled low with frustration, she's just being dramatic, once she realizes I'm not playing her game, she'll come crawling back. A tear slid down my cheek, I walked into the cold night and threw the trash away along with the very last shred of love I had left for him. The second I opened the door, I heard a noise coming from the nursery, and my anger flare up. Beckett had renovated that room the moment he found out I was pregnant. He'd filled it with only the best, every piece of furniture, every stuffed animal, every blanket, he picked them all out himself, for our baby. And now he wanted to give that to Delaney? Fury surged through me, I stormed down the hallway and swung the door open, only to find Delaney lying in the crib. I yanked her up without thinking, rage burning in my chest, but before I could get a word out, Beckett grabbed my wrist and pulled me away from her. What is wrong with you? You act like a lunatic the second you walk in, he snapped, but when he saw the tears in my eyes, he hesitated, his grip loosening just a little. Are you really giving her this room? I asked, my voice raw and broken. Beckett frowned, Delaney said she likes it, it's not a big deal if she stays here for a while. Do you remember? Enough, Evelyn, he cut me off, irritated, everything you've done these past few days has been disappointing, if you keep acting like this, I'll have to reconsider whether this marriage should even continue. He paused, eyes cold, you don't want the baby inside you to be born without a father, do you? He was threatening me, with divorce. Looking at his face, the side he always turned away when he was done with an argument, I felt the memories unravel, the promises, the whispered sweet nothings, all turning to ash in a matter of months. He once said this room would always belong to our baby, he said he would treasure both of us for the rest of his life. And yet here we were. I didn't say anything else, I turned around and walked out, numb, my hand instinctively cradled my belly, feeling the faint flutter of life inside me. Don't worry, baby, we don't need that room, I'll make you a better one. Behind me, Beckett stood frozen, watching me walk away, that same flicker of guilt from the hospital flashed across his face again, sharp and quick, then buried. But as Delaney called out to him from the nursery, he turned and walked back to her. Later, when I was back in the master bedroom, my phone buzzed, I got a string of voice messages from Delaney. I opened them one by one and hearing Beckett's doting tone in the recordings, I realized all their past affection was just practice for Beckett. He was practicing on me and our baby, all for the sake of Delaney's child. Every nourishing soup I drank, every gift I received for the baby, every parenting tip Beckett shared with me, it was all just practice for Delaney's baby. Even the nursery itself was prepared by Beckett for the child in Delaney's womb. I and the baby were just tools for Beckett's rehearsal, he didn't want Delaney to suffer through his learning curve, so I became the sacrifice. I listened to the messages over and over, the pain swelling inside me until I laughed, not because it was funny, because it hurt so much it pushed me over the edge, everything I had been so proud of since the moment I got pregnant had been nothing but a lie. Beckett's tenderness toward my child? It didn't even come close to what he showed Delaney and hers. I clenched my phone so tightly my hand shook, it hurt to breathe, all I could do was whisper over and over to myself that it was okay. It was okay, because soon, we'd be free of him. Just me and the baby, and we'd be just fine. The baby kicked, like he could hear me, like he understood. I wrapped my arms around my belly and held it close. I stayed that way for a long time, until I could finally breathe again. After Delaney moved in, Beckett practically glued himself to her side. And me? I stopped expecting anything from him the moment I saw the truth. One night, as I walked downstairs to get some water, I heard her voice through the slightly open door of the guest room. Beckett, she cooed, I heard that St. Christopher medal from your family works really well, the baby's been keeping me up at night, could I borrow it for a while? The medal wasn't just a piece of jewelry, it was a Shaw family heirloom, a symbol that whoever wore it was the rightful Mrs. Shaw. Beckett had given it to me on our wedding day, clasped it around my neck himself. He said it would be mine forever, because there would never be another Mrs. Shaw. His voice pulled me out of the memory. Through the gap in the door, I saw him press a gentle kiss to her cheek and smile. Of course, I'll ask her for it. You can wear it as long as you want, at least until the baby's born. A sharp pain stabbed through my chest. I couldn't even remember his exact promise anymore, but it didn't matter, because clearly, neither could he. I took a step back, but the floor creaked under my foot. Beckett opened the door and found me standing there. He looked startled, guilty, even. He stepped outside, pulled the door shut behind him and led me to a corner of the hallway. "Evelyn, you heard that, didn't you?" he asked hesitantly. I didn't say anything. He hesitated again before speaking. "Delaney's been having trouble sleeping. Do you think you could let her borrow the medal for a bit?" I nodded slowly, but at that moment, a sharp pain twisted through my side. I winced and swallowed it down. "I'll give it to her, but on one condition." Beckett's face lit up like I just handed him the moon. He stepped toward me, ready to wrap me in a hug, but I took a step back before he could touch me. Delaney's scent was all over him. It made me want to gag. "I'm glad you're finally coming around," he said with a relieved smile. "Once Delaney has the baby, I'll give it back. Don't worry, your place in this family isn't going anywhere." So he did remember what the medal stood for. "I don't care if she never gives it back," I said quietly. "I just need you to sign this." I turned and walked upstairs. A minute later, I came back down with the divorce papers in hand, already flipped to the page where his signature was needed. "There's no need to be upset," he said softly, like he was trying to soothe me. "Delaney's not going to keep it forever. Like I said, I'll return it once she has the baby." He signed the papers without even glancing at them. As soon as I held the signed divorce papers in my hands, the storm inside me quieted. I never expected it would be this easy. Beckett gave me a small smile. "I know I haven't been there for you these past few months. Go ahead and buy whatever you want, I'll take care of the bill." So that's why he was so quick to sign. He thought this was just me angling for a shopping spree. I unclasped the medal from around my neck and handed it to him, expressionless. For a moment, he hesitated, but eventually, he took it and held it tight. "Don't worry, once the baby's born, it'll be yours again," he repeated, like he needed to convince himself. But I didn't care anymore. "She can wear it for as long as she wants," I said flatly. Overcome with emotion, Beckett pulled me into a hug. I pushed him off immediately, but he didn't seem to mind. He turned and walked straight back into Delaney's room. A second later, I heard her squealing with joy. I just stood there, staring out the window. Tomorrow was the day I'd leave, and this time, I wouldn't hesitate. That night, Beckett finally came back to sleep in the master bedroom. He tried to curl up with me like he used to, like nothing had changed, but I pulled away the moment he reached for me. Ever since I found out about them, every time he came near me, I felt like I was going to be sick. I closed my eyes, pretending to sleep, but sleep never came. I lay awake in silence until I heard movement beside me. Then Beckett's low, gentle voice broke the quiet. Okay. I'll come over now, don't cry, it breaks my heart when you cry." I didn't know what Delaney said on the other end, but Beckett jumped out of bed, not caring if he woke me. Something compelled me to follow him. Maybe it was morbid curiosity. I walked silently behind him and stopped in the doorway of her room. Delaney was lying on the bed, her hair disheveled, her clothes barely clinging to her body, her cheeks were tear-streaked and her eyes puffy from crying. She looked like the perfect picture of pitiful fragility. Beckett rushed to her like a man possessed and scooped her into his arms. "I couldn't sleep without you," she whimpered. "Every time I close my eyes, I see the scene of the engagement being broken off. I'm so scared, Beckett." She nestled into him, her cleavage fully exposed, her voice like a helpless child. Beckett's breathing grew heavier, his eyes dark with lust. "You're okay now," he murmured, voice low and intimate. "I won't go back to my room, I'll sleep here with you from now on, okay?" He held her tighter. Delaney looked up at him with trembling lashes. "I know I shouldn't be monopolizing you like this. Evelyn would be upset if she found out. I don't want to cause problems, but the baby, it only calms down when you're near." She leaned into him again, delicate and weak, and Beckett's eyes welled with emotion. "Don't worry," he whispered, "even if Evelyn finds out, we've done nothing wrong. You need me more. She's strong, she can take care of herself." I stood there frozen, listening to them discuss me like I was an afterthought. Then, as if things couldn't get worse, Delaney blushed and lifted her face toward his. "The doctor said the baby's stable at 4 months. Beckett, can I give myself to you tonight?" Beckett didn't even hesitate. He dove in and kissed her, passionately, hungrily. Within moments, they were tangled together in bed, consumed by each other. I had never seen him like that before, completely unrestrained, utterly lost in another woman, so that was what it looked like when he really loved someone. I turned away, numb, and walked barefoot back to the bedroom. I had always known something was going on between them, but seeing it with my own eyes? That lit a fire in me I didn't even know existed. He didn't came back that night, and I never closed my eyes. By dawn, I had packed my things and made my way downstairs with my suitcase. That's when I saw them. Beckett was sitting by Delaney, gently feeding her soup. Before I could say a word, he looked up and panicked when he saw me. He quickly set the bowl down, his face stiff as he scrambled to explain. Delaney didn't have much appetite this morning. I just made her some broth to help her feel better. I nodded blandly and reached for my suitcase. That's when he noticed it. His expression darkened instantly. What the hell is this? He snapped. You're leaving? Just because I made her a bowl of soup? He grabbed my suitcase from me, his expression darkening. I glanced at the red marks scattered across his neck and a wave of nausea rolled through me. Just soup? I said coldly, you might want to check yourself in the mirror. Beckett instantly raised his hand to his neck, trying to cover the evidence. Mosquitoes, he muttered, there were so many last night. I let out a bitter laugh and turned away, not worth a response. But my silence only seemed to fuel his anger. I said it was mosquito bites. Can you stop being so jealous all the time? He barked. Then, in a sudden fit of rage, he slammed the suitcase to the floor. I flinched and instinctively covered my belly. His face shifted when he saw the gesture, guilt flashing for a split second, but before he could say anything, Delaney's voice floated over sweetly. Beckett, this is partly my fault too. Let me apologize to Evelyn. She walked over with the same soup bowl, her voice dripping with false kindness. Evelyn, don't be upset. You can have the soup, I don't mind. I looked down and saw the faint imprint of her lipstick on the rim. Get that thing away from me. I snarled, shoving the bowl aside. It hit the ground and shattered, hot liquid spilling everywhere. Delaney shrieked. Beckett, it hurts, she cried dramatically, holding out her hand with a tiny red mark that was barely visible. Beckett's eyes darkened. He soothed Delaney first, then stood up and stormed toward me, grabbing my arm. I struggled, trying to pull away, but he ignored it and dragged me into the kitchen. His expression twisted with rage. Didn't I tell you to be more understanding? She was trying to be nice and you attacked her. You need to learn a lesson. His tone terrifying. Before I could react, he shoved my hand into a pot of steaming soup, still hot, still burning at 70 degrees. I screamed. The pain was immediate and excruciating, tears streaming down my face uncontrollably. When he finally let go, I collapsed to the floor, shaking. He loomed over me coldly. This was just a warning. Hurt Delaney again and I won't be so gentle. In that moment, Beckett felt like the devil himself. His presence terrified me to my core. The burning pain in my hand brought fresh tears streaming down my face. Seeing this, Beckett's expression softened slightly. He reached out, as if to touch me, but I flinched away in fear. He caught my wrist again. Are you scared of me? There was a flicker of something in his eyes, maybe guilt, maybe regret, I don't know. Before he could say another word, Delaney called out from the hallway. Without hesitation, Beckett dropped my arm and ran to her. The sudden release made me fall again, hitting the floor hard. A sharp pain shot through my abdomen and warm blood began to flow down my thighs. Fear consumed me. Beckett, I gasped, my voice trembling, the baby. He didn't even turn around. Don't you dare use the baby to guilt-trip me, he snapped. You just hurt Delaney and I haven't forgiven you for that. Right now, you and that child don't matter compared to her. And just like that, he swept Delaney into his arms and disappeared down the hallway. Leaving me alone. Me and our baby. I couldn't even scream for help. All I could do was cry, silent, aching tears. Pain gripped me from two directions, my burned hand and the agony in my belly, and I could feel myself slipping, falling. Beckett had chosen her, again. Even when all she had was a damn surface burn and that our child might die. With what little strength I had left, I reached for my phone and dialed 911. By the time I opened my eyes, I was already in the hospital. A nurse was rushing me down the hallway, panic in her voice. Page the doctor, now. She doesn't look good, we might be looking at a preterm delivery. She glanced around urgently. Where's her phone? We need to call her family and get her husband here ASAP. We'll need his signature on the surgery consent form. The sound of unanswered calls echoed through the corridor. A single tear slipped down my cheek. Of course Beckett wasn't picking up. He was probably too busy playing the loving partner to his darling Delaney. What did it matter to him if I, or our baby, lived or died? Sure enough, after a few more unanswered calls, the line went dead. He'd hung up on me. The nurse glanced down at me with concern. Do you have any other family we can contact? We can't get through to your husband. My hand trembled as I lifted it. I'll sign it myself. I scrawled my name on the form with trembling hands. From this moment on, neither my baby nor I needed Beckett. I never expected that after signing the paperwork, I'd be left waiting in the delivery room with no doctor in sight. Fighting through the pain, I asked the nurse. She looked troubled but hurried to explain. Someone important just arrived, a Shaw. He came with his pregnant wife. It's just a minor burn, but he pulled every available doctor from the hospital to treat her, even our obstetrics team. But don't worry, they'll be back soon, hang in there. She gently wiped the sweat off my forehead, but her words couldn't reach the storm inside me. The pain tearing through my body was nothing compared to what I felt in my chest. The rightful Mrs. Shaw lay in the ward, fighting for her life. Meanwhile, Delaney, the mistress, with her tiny burn got the whole hospital moving. I could barely breathe and my vision went dark at the edges. Just before I passed out, I heard the nurse shout desperately, "We're losing her. Someone help." I woke up a day later. My first instinct was to reach for my belly. When I realized it was completely flat, it was like lightning cracked through my skull. My baby, where's my baby? Panic surged as I ripped the floor from my arm and tried to climb out of bed, ignoring the sharp pain. Just then, the nurse walked in, cradling something in her arms. She placed a tiny bundle in mine, and in that moment, as I held my child close to my chest, I finally at ease. 2 weeks later, I stood at the airport holding my baby. All the documents were finalized. As I glanced up at the giant screen displaying the latest gossip about Beckett pampering his lover, I didn't hesitate. I clutched my baby tighter and boarded the plane. After dropping Delaney off at the hospital, the sound of my voice crying out on the floor kept playing in Beckett's mind. It unsettled him. The unease that had been simmering in his gut was getting harder to ignore. Frowning, he reached for his phone. Before he could dial, Delaney cried out. "Beckett, it hurts so much." She leaned into him, fragile and trembling. Instinctively, he wrapped his arms around her. "The doctor already treated you, why are you still in pain?" Tears welled up in her eyes. She clutched her stomach, wincing. "My belly hurts so bad, what if something happens to the baby?" "I really want to apologize to Evelyn. I didn't expect her to get that angry," she added. Beckett's jaw clenched. "I've spoiled her too much, that's why she's been acting out. Don't worry, I'll call her and straighten her out." But just as he unlocked his phone, hesitation flickered across his face. He remembered what he'd done, shoving my hand into that pot of boiling soup and walking away like it was nothing. I was 8 months pregnant, even he couldn't pretend that was okay. "I already punished her for you, that burn should taught her a lesson," he muttered, guilt slowly eating away at him. "But still, she's my wife and she's carrying my child, I should at least show some care for her." As he fumbled with his phone, Delaney noticed the shift in his expression. Seeing the worry on his face, Delaney was surprised that Beckett still had some genuine care for me. A flash of bitterness crossed her eyes. "I don't know if I should tell you this, but," she said hesitantly, voice laced with fake concern, "Evelyn might know about us and she's been sending me threatening messages. I wouldn't care if it's for me, but..." Beckett's brows knitted together. "But?" she said. Delaney swallowed hard, tears welling up again. "She said she'd kill my baby." She burst into sobs, burying her face in his chest. "No way," Beckett recoiled. "Evelyn might be a little hot-tempered, but she's not that kind of person. Are you sure you're not misunderstanding her?" His eyes studied Delaney, uncertainty flickering behind them. Delaney clenched her teeth so hard she nearly chipped a molar. Without another word, she pulled out her phone and shoved it toward him. "Here, these are the messages Evelyn sent me. I wish I was wrong, but..." She didn't finish her sentence. Beckett stared at the screen, his face hardening with every message he read. One after another, they shattered the image he had of me in his mind. "She's probably extra sensitive right now because of the pregnancy," he muttered, "but don't worry, I'll protect you. I won't let her lay a hand on you or the baby." His jaw tightened. "If Evelyn really has lost it to that extent, then I'll have no choice but to kick her out so she can come to her senses." Delaney leaned into him, triumph burning in her eyes. Their eyes locked once more as they intertwined again. They stayed in the hospital for a full week. Only after the doctors confirmed nothing was wrong with her that they finally left. Beckett thought that time apart would be enough for me to cool off. He expected to find me sulking at home, maybe even apologetic, but when he got back, I was nowhere to be found. He brushed it off at first, thinking I had gone out to clear my head. But a month passed, and I never came home. The memory of my weak, trembling voice kept haunting him. Finally, Beckett cracked. He marched into the police station, ready to report me missing. After explaining everything, he was already thinking of ways to teach me a lesson, but when the officer came back with the report, it hit him like a bolt of lightning. "Mr. Shaw, our records show that you and Ms. Carrington are no longer married. You don't have the right to access her whereabouts." Beckett stared, stunned. "What did you say?" Beckett's voice was barely a whisper, the words scraping against his throat like dry leaves. He stared at the police officer, his mind flatlining. The officer, a burly man with a no-nonsense expression, slid the printed file across the metal desk. I said, "You are no longer legally married to Ms. Evelyn Carrington. The divorce was finalized and expedited 30 days ago. As a legally unattached individual, Ms. Carrington's whereabouts, travel records, and medical history are none of your business. Have a good day, Mr. Shaw." Beckett didn't move. His eyes remained locked on the bold print of the document, dissolution of marriage. At the bottom, his own signature stared back at him, sharp and undeniable. A cold sweat broke across his neck, his mind raced backward, tearing through the hazy memories of the past month, the night he asked for the Shaw family heirloom medal, Evelyn standing on the stairs, her face devoid of any emotion, holding out a stack of papers. "I don't care if she never gives it back, I just need you to sign this." He had thought it was a petty contract about the jewelry. He hadn't even looked. He had signed his marriage away for a mistress's temper tantrum. Panic, raw and suffocating, seized his chest. He stumbled out of the precinct, the crisp autumn air doing nothing to clear the sudden, violent spinning in his head. He pulled out his phone, his thumb trembling as he dialed Evelyn's number. "The number you have dialed is no longer in service." "Damn it!" Beckett slammed his fist against the steering wheel of his car. He drove like a madman to the hospital, the same hospital where he had left her a month ago. The memory of her lying on the kitchen floor, clutching her belly, the boiling soup pooling around her burned hand, hit him with the force of a freight train. He had told himself she was faking it. He had told himself Delaney needed him more. He burst through the doors of the obstetrics wing, demanding to see Evelyn's records. A senior physician, Dr. Eris, stepped out of his office. When he recognized Beckett, his face hardened into a mask of pure disgust. "You have a lot of nerve showing your face in my ward, Mr. Shaw," Dr. Eris said, his voice dropping to a low, dangerous register. "Where is my wife? I mean, Evelyn, where is she?" Beckett demanded, his chest heaving. "Miss Carrington discharged herself against medical advice 4 weeks ago," Dr. Eris replied coldly, "and frankly, it's a miracle she walked out of here alive." Beckett's breath hitched. "What do you mean?" She fell. She suffered second and third-degree thermal burns to her right hand and forearm, Mr. Shaw, the shock and trauma-induced placental abruption. She hemorrhaged entirely alone in our waiting room because you were unreachable." Dr. Eris stepped closer, his voice laced with venom, "and that wasn't even the worst of it. Did you even bother to read her oncology report?" The world dropped out from beneath Beckett's feet. "Oncology?" "Stage 2 cervical cancer," Dr. Eris said, each word a nail in Beckett's coffin. "She came in for her prenatal checkup that day to discuss how to balance her chemotherapy with the premature delivery of your child, but you didn't know that, did you? You were too busy commandeering an entire surgical team for a woman with a half-inch splash burn." Beckett couldn't breathe, his lungs seized, the air suddenly turning to ground glass. "Beckett, do you know what this is?" Evelyn's tear-stained face flashed in his mind. She had shoved a piece of paper into his chest outside the examination room. He had torn it in half. He had thrown her cancer diagnosis in the trash without even looking at it. No, that can't be." Beckett staggered backward, his knees giving out. He collapsed against the cold hospital wall, his hands clutching his hair as a guttural, agonizing sound tore from his throat. He had burned her, he had abandoned her, she was dying, and he had told her she was throwing a tantrum. 2 years later, Geneva, Switzerland. The crisp alpine wind blew through the floor-to-ceiling windows of the estate, bringing with it the scent of pine and fresh snow. I sat in the plush armchair, a steaming cup of Earl Grey tea resting on the mahogany table beside me. "Mama!" A tiny, joyous voice echoed from the hallway. I turned just in time to catch a 2-year-old bullet of pure energy as he barreled into my arms. "Gotcha, Leo," I laughed, burying my face in my son's dark, soft curls. Leo giggled, his bright green eyes, the exact shade of my own, crinkling with delight. He managed to evade 3 nannies and the head of security just to bring you a pine cone, a deep, warm voice drawled from the doorway. I looked up. Julian Sterling leaned against the doorframe, looking effortlessly striking in a tailored charcoal turtleneck and slacks. Julian was my father's protégé, a brilliant venture capitalist who had practically moved into the Geneva estate to oversee the European branch of Carrington Enterprises, but over the past 2 years, he had become so much more than a colleague. He was the man who had sat by my bedside while the chemotherapy ravaged my body. He was the man who had held Leo when I was too weak to lift my own arms. He was the antithesis of everything Beckett Shaw had ever been, patient, steady, and entirely devoted. "It's a very impressive pine cone," I said, accepting the gift from Leo's chubby hands. Julian walked over, his eyes softening as he looked down at us. He gently brushed a stray lock of hair behind my ear. My hair had grown back into a sleek, dark bob, thicker and healthier than before. "Dr. Mercier called this morning," Julian said quietly, his thumb lingering on my cheek. "Your latest scans are completely clear, Evelyn, 2 years in remission." I closed my eyes, letting out a breath I felt like I had been holding for 24 months. The ghosts of the hospital in America, the burning soup, the tearing of the cancer report, they finally felt like they belonged to someone else's life. We're going back, I said, opening my eyes to meet Julian's. The Carrington-Sterling merger is finalizing next month in New York. I want to be there, I'm ready. Julian's lips curved into a soft, breathtaking smile. He knelt down so he was eye level with me and Leo. From his jacket pocket, he pulled out a small, velvet box. If we're going back, Julian said, his voice thick with emotion, I want to go back as your husband. I don't want to spend another day of my life just standing beside you, Evelyn. I want to build the rest of it with you. He opened the box. A stunning, flawless emerald-cut diamond caught the alpine light. Tears, this time, of pure, unadulterated happiness, pricked my eyes. I looked at the man who had mended every piece of my shattered soul, and I didn't hesitate. Yes, I whispered. The downward spiral. Beckett sat in the sprawling, suffocatingly dark living room of the Shaw mansion. The house was a tomb. It had been 2 years, but the silence still deafened him. Empty bottles of scotch littered the glass coffee table. He hadn't touched the nursery. The door remained locked, preserving the ghost of a life he had destroyed with his own 2 hands. Footsteps clattered down the stairs. Delaney appeared in the doorway, her face twisted in a permanent scowl. She held a crying, red-faced toddler on her hip. Are you just going to sit there and drink all day? She snapped. Your mother just called. She's cutting off our secondary credit cards because you haven't shown up to a board meeting in 3 months. Beckett slowly turned his head, his eyes, sunken and bloodshot, fixed on Delaney. The illusion he once held of her, the fragile, sweet first love, had shattered so thoroughly he wondered if it had ever been real. Living with Delaney had been a waking nightmare. Without the thrill of sneaking around, her true nature had rapidly surfaced. She was demanding, vain, and entirely devoid of the maternal warmth she had so carefully faked. And then there was the boy. Beckett looked at the toddler crying on her hip. Little Toby had fine, thin blonde hair and narrow blue eyes. Beckett had dark hair. Delaney had dark brown hair. For a year and a half, Beckett had lived in a state of paralyzing denial, but today, the denial had finally expired. I received an email this morning, Beckett said, his voice completely hollow. Delaney froze. What email? Beckett reached into his coat pocket and tossed a crumpled piece of paper onto the coffee table. It landed next to a spilled shot glass. I hired a private investigator a week ago to run a DNA test. The color drained from Delaney's face. She instinctively took a step back, her grip tightening on the crying child. You went behind my back? How could you? 0%, Beckett interrupted, his voice rising, vibrating with a rage that shook the crystal glasses on the table. He is not my son, he never was. Delaney's mouth opened and closed like a fish. Beckett, I can explain. It was the clinic. They must have made a mistake. The investigator didn't just test the kid. Beckett stood up, his towering frame casting a dark shadow over her. He tracked down your ex-fiancé, the one who supposedly broke your heart. Turns out, he dumped you because he caught you sleeping with his brother, but the timeline of your pregnancy lines up perfectly with him, doesn't it? No. Beckett, please. Delaney sobbed, the fake tears she used so weaponizingly in the past springing to her eyes, but they had absolutely no effect on him anymore. They only made him nauseous. And those threatening texts you showed me? Beckett sneered, closing the distance between them. The investigator traced the IP address. You bought a burner phone in downtown Seattle. You texted yourself. You faked the whole damn thing to make me think Evelyn was a monster. Because I loved you, she screamed, backing into the wall. She was in the way. I just wanted us to be a family. You cost me my wife. Beckett roared, the sound tearing his vocal cords. He kicked the glass coffee table. It shattered, raining shards of glass across the expensive rug. You cost me my real child. You knew she had cancer, and you let me push her to the ground. You let me burn her. Delaney cowered, trembling violently. Get out, Beckett whispered, his chest heaving as the rage gave way to absolute, crushing despair. Pack your things, take that bastard child, and get out of my house. If you are not gone in 1 hour, I will have security drag you out by your hair, and I will make sure you don't see a single cent of the Shaw family money. You will rot in the streets. He turned his back on her, ignoring her wails and pleas. He walked to the front door, stepping out into the cold night. He had nothing left. The realization was a physical weight, pressing him into the dirt. He had traded a diamond for a piece of broken glass, and he had bled himself dry in the process. The return. New York City glittered under the autumn sun. The Carrington-Sterling merger had dominated the financial news cycle for weeks, but it was the upcoming society wedding that had the city buzzing. Beckett sat in his dimly lit office at Shaw Industries, staring blankly at his computer monitor. His company was hemorrhaging money. Without the Carrington family's backing, the board was preparing to vote him out as CEO. His assistant knocked tentatively and stepped inside, placing the morning paper on his desk. Sir, the finalized contracts for the downtown development. She trailed off when she saw he wasn't listening. Beckett's eyes were locked on the front page of the New York Times lifestyle section. A full-color photograph dominated the page. It was Evelyn. The breath was knocked entirely out of his lungs. She looked magnificent. She was wearing an elegant, form-fitting ivory gown, her dark hair cascading over her shoulders, her skin glowed with health, her smile radiant and genuine. Beside her stood a tall, striking man in a bespoke suit, Julian Sterling. He was looking at Evelyn like she was the only oxygen left on Earth. Carrington heiress to wed venture capitalist Julian Sterling in exclusive plaza ceremony this Saturday. Beckett's hands shook violently as he picked up the paper. She was alive. She survived the cancer, she survived him. He stared at the face of the woman he had promised to love and protect, the woman he had tortured and abandoned. A sudden, delusional spark ignited in the dark void of his mind. Saturday, the plaza. She was his wife, she was supposed to be his wife. The divorce had been a mistake, signed under false pretenses. If he could just see her, if he could just show her how much he had changed, how thoroughly he had purged Delaney from his life, she would understand. Evelyn had always been soft-hearted, she had loved him so much once, that love couldn't just vanish. Clear my schedule for Saturday, Beckett rasped, his eyes burning with a feverish desperation. The wedding. The grand ballroom of the Plaza Hotel was a vision of white orchids and crystal chandeliers. The string quartet played a soft, sweeping melody as the elite of New York society took their seats. In the bridal suite, I stood before the gilded mirror, letting out a soft exhale. The dress was a masterpiece of silk and vintage lace. The Shaw family heirloom medal was gone, replaced by a stunning sapphire necklace my father had given me, perfectly complementing my mother's vintage veil. You look like an angel, Evie, my father said, stepping into the room. His eyes were bright with unshed tears. Thanks, Dad, I smiled, turning to squeeze his hands. There was a sudden commotion out in the hallway, a loud crash, followed by the shouts of hotel security. I need to see her. Let me go, damn it, she's my wife. My blood froze for a fraction of a second. I knew that voice, even after 3 years. The arrogant, frantic timbre of Beckett Shaw's voice was unmistakable. My father's face darkened with fury. I'll have him thrown into the Hudson. No, I said softly, my voice calm. I surprised myself. There was no racing heart, there was no panic, just a cold, absolute indifference. Let him in, Dad, I'll handle it. My father hesitated, then gave a sharp nod to the security guards. The heavy oak doors burst open. Beckett stumbled into the room, fighting off 2 large men in suits. When he looked up and saw me, the fight instantly drained out of him. He froze, his eyes wide, taking in the sight of me in my wedding dress. He looked terrible. His once handsome face was gaunt, his eyes bloodshot and rimmed with dark, heavy bags. His suit hung loosely on his frame. He looked like a man who had been walking through a desert for 3 years. Evelyn, he breathed, his voice cracking. He took a hesitant step forward, tears instantly spilling over his lashes. My God, you're alive, you're so beautiful. Stop right there, Beckett, I said, my tone as sharp and smooth as glass. He flinched, but the desperation pushed him forward. He fell to his knees, right there on the plush carpet of the bridal suite, ignoring my father and the guards. Evelyn, please, he begged, the tears tracking down his hollow cheeks. I know everything. I know about the cancer. I know about the burns. I am so sorry. I was blind. Delaney manipulated me. She lied about the baby. She faked the texts. I threw her out, Evelyn. I threw her out the moment I found out. I've kept the nursery exactly how you left it. I haven't touched a thing. Please, you can't marry him. I looked down at the man kneeling before me. I searched my heart for any lingering trace of the girl who had cried outside the obstetrics ward, the girl who had begged for his attention, the girl who had let him burn her hand. She was dead. Are you finished? I asked. Beckett blinked, staring up at me with red, pathetic eyes. Evelyn, I love you. We can fix this. I'll spend the rest of my life making it up to you. I'll buy you a new house. We can travel. We can. Beckett, I cut him off, my voice dropping to a terrifyingly quiet whisper. Do you know what I remember about our marriage? He swallowed hard, trembling. I don't remember our wedding day. I don't remember your vows, I said, looking down at him as if he were a stain on the rug. I remember the smell of my own flesh burning in the kitchen. I remember sitting in a pool of my own blood in the hospital, begging a nurse to find my husband while I was losing my child. Beckett let out a choked sob, burying his face in his hands. Please stop. You didn't just break my heart, Beckett, you left me to die, I continued, merciless. You didn't come here today because you love me, you came here because your mistress's baby wasn't yours, your company is failing, and you finally realized you threw away the only person who ever actually cared about you. You're not heartbroken, you're just lonely. That's not true, he cried, reaching out to grab the hem of my dress. Before his fingers could even brush the silk, a hand clamped down on his shoulder. Julian stepped out from the adjoining room. He didn't look angry, he just looked at Beckett with the profound pity one reserves for a dying insect. Remove your hand, Shaw, Julian said, his voice deep and commanding, or I'll break it. Beckett looked up, his face contorting with hatred. This is my wife, Sterling. You have no right. She ceased being your wife the day you tortured her for another woman, Julian interrupted smoothly. He signaled the guards, get him out of here. If he steps foot within a mile of this hotel again, press charges for trespassing and harassment. The guards seized Beckett by the arms, hauling him up. Evelyn! No! Please! Beckett thrashed wildly, his screams echoing down the corridor as they dragged him backward. I love you. You can't do this. Evelyn! I watched him go, my face completely impassive. When the heavy doors finally clicked shut, severing his voice from my life forever, I let out a long, peaceful exhale. Julian stepped up behind me, wrapping his arms around my waist and pressing a soft kiss to my temple. Are you all right, my love? I turned in his arms, looking up into the kind, steady eyes of the man who had shown me what real love was. I'm perfect, I smiled. The string quartet outside transitioned to the wedding march. My father extended his arm to me, his chest puffed out with pride. I took my father's arm, holding my head high. As I walked down the aisle, the sunlight streamed through the stained glass windows, illuminating the faces of the people who truly loved me. At the end of the altar, Julian waited, his eyes shining with a promise he would never break. In the front row, my little boy, Leo, sat happily on his nanny's lap, waving a white rose. I didn't look back. I stepped out of the shadows of the past and walked straight into the light.